Mr. Ken Forrester, Mr. Chenin Blanc, as one of our learners told me today, how excited he is to hear this podcast. It's been a long time coming. Should we start this off with a pop or a bang?
Well, I think we should just show you the whole new thing. What we have here is sparkling wine with a crown cap, a beer cork.
Fantastic.
And it's a hipster pet nat.
Brilliant.
It's kind of way out there. People kind of saying, Ken, how come you're doing pet nat? I'm like, you never seen a 66-year-old hipster. What's your problem? Right now.
Oh, fantastic, Ken. I'm so excited for this. We are under the influence of Chenin Blanc. It's been something that we've been planning. You've been roaming around North America, parts of East Africa, Europe. I've been roaming around Africa, and we finally got together. Thank you for being here.
It's cool, man. Thank you. It's taken a while. It's taken some time. We've been planning this.
We have.
Yeah.
We have. And in the meantime, we've been working together for many years, and it's just such an incredible journey that we've been on. And let's cheers to that.
Cheers, man. Thank you for your support.
Oh. So Ken, I think the reason we chose Chenin, I think for me it's quite an exciting discussion, because Chenin Blanc is this grape that is effectively become endemic. It's become a South African grape, even though it doesn't come from South Africa. Yeah. It's got so much unique character. It's become adapted to our soils, to our conditions. But when you drove into your farm, having just purchased it in 1994, there was a vineyard on your right-hand side, but I would imagine you sort of drove kind of past that and were looking at other parts of the farm. Chenin Blanc wasn't in your mind at that time.
It's not quite the case. We had dinner one evening with one of the prominent wine producers in Stellenbosch, and I said to him, isn't there a property that hasn't yet been pushed up and kind of blown up by the estate agents? Is there something that just needs some tender loving care?
Yeah, a fixer-upper.
A renovator's dream. Yeah, like nightmare. Depending how you look.
Yeah.
And he said, if you go out towards the ocean, there's a place there on the right, you can hardly see it. It's run down and it's broken, and those soils, you'll never be able to plant Cabernet. You'll never be a Cabernet producer. And I was talking to Jannie Elbrecht at Rustenfriede.
Okay.
So the Holy Grail Cabernet. So I thought, well, the world's not only about Cabernet. Let's see what other options there might be. Went to go look at this property, kicking the dust. A guy came along. We were incidentally, my wife and I were in the Cape for a wedding on a weekend. We'd left our kids with my parents in Johannesburg. We had restaurants in Johannesburg.
Yes.
I was running restaurants. I'd studied hotel management, worked for Southern Sun Hotels, worked for Sol Koesler, opened 5 hotels. Classic burnout, got out of the business, went into helping a friend with a restaurant, bought his restaurant. 5 years later, I had restaurants. And take a weekend off, go to the Cape. 1993, Mr. Mandela is about to become the first president of the Democratic South Africa. And my wife and I are kicking the dust on a farm one Sunday on this vineyard. They've got this ancient homestead above the gable, above the door. It says 1694. I'm like, could that be real? I wonder. The walls are a meter thick.
Wow.
The house is derelict, run down. It is crazy. The vineyard's great because the next door neighbor has been farming the vineyard for his own account. happily just taking a few hundred extra tons. Nobody's kind of noticing. It turns out the bank wanted this place to sell. It was a bankrupt estate.
Yeah.
And with the elections coming up, they were cleaning up their books. They put this thing on an auction. While we were there kicking the dust, a guy comes along and says, what are you doing? You're trespassing. We're like, sorry, just having a look, We're going to take this to an auction. I said, well, maybe you don't have to go to auction. So we bought a vineyard while we were here looking at a wedding. Like everybody does when you're 35.
Yeah, just to help with the burnout, just to
just try that for size.
Because I think you were, from a hospitality perspective, because a lot of the individuals that watch the channel, they're in the hospitality industry, they're in restaurants, they're in hotels, they're in lodges. you were also extremely innovative at the time, because weren't you doing special bottlings and you developed relationships with the wineries? So you had an intimate knowledge of South African wine at that point already.
And my restaurants 40 years ago had a major wine program, all of them.
Wow.
And that included having a walk-in wine cellar
Wow.
in every restaurant. So I could take you from the table into the cellar, go pick a bottle. And you'd walk out of the cellar holding something that you weren't ever going to buy, but you did.
Yeah.
But you loved the relationship. You loved the fact you could go and pick something. And so that was very much part of our marketing. So wine was in me. I had a bug, a bad bug to kind of get this going. And then it was a question of unbundling the restaurants, selling the restaurants, moving from Johannesburg down to Cape Town, down to Stellenbosch, and starting producing wine.
Amazing, Ken.
And we started off, believe it or not, misstep, we started off the best tasting grapes, according to me, were the Sauvignon Blanc grapes on the property.
Yeah.
Because Sauvignon grapes taste delicious.
Yes.
Chenin Blanc grapes don't show themselves. And Chenin's that shy, quiet, you just don't notice it till you do. Then you go, how did I miss you?
Yeah.
But Sauvignon was pretty and right up there forward. And I took just about 3 tons, 2.7 tons, to Mike Dobrovich, who was Stellenbosch, who was the king of Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
And we made Sauvignon Blanc.
So that was the very first wine.
That night, his wife locked us out the house. We stepped in the cellar. I don't know why.
So it all started with Sauvignon Blanc. And I mean, your Sauvignon Blanc remains absolutely beautiful. But it must have been really tough at that time, because I remember, I was still in school, but I actually remember meeting at a friend's house, like Michel Roulin, and there was a big push in Cape wine. Parkerization was at full flight. So in other words, making wines that had that like Cabernet, Merlot, parkerized, polished, big tannins. So it must have been quite difficult to resist that as a brand new entrant.
I've got a great picture on my wall of maybe 1,000 sheep, and in the middle of these 1,000 sheep there's one sheep going the other direction.
Okay, yeah.
That's me.
Or maybe you're the sheepdog in the middle of the sheep.
I've always figured out if the sheep are coming towards me, I'm going in the right direction. They've all got it wrong.
Brilliant.
And I wasn't so keen on just doing another Cabernet. We're trying to get into that
mold.
That's like kind of getting into rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
I wanted to find a quiet road that I could take on my own. And
Brilliant.
Chenin Blanc was basically available.
Amazing.
Nobody was looking out for Chenin Blanc. I had this concept that Chenin Blanc produced wonderful, wonderful wines in France.
Yes.
I tasted some magic Sauvignons from the Loire.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they just don't call it Chenin Blanc, but we can call it Chenin Blanc.
Yeah.
An even better idea. So we started producing Chenin Blanc and started with an old vineyard on the property, planted in 1974. Went and worked in France. Went and worked in the Loire Valley.
So you actually went across to do a harvest?
I did 5 vintages in the Loire, back on back with South Africa. So I was doing 2 vintages a year, Loire, South Africa, Loire, South Africa, Loire, South Africa.
So your wife was very excited to have more time with you after the restaurant industry, and then you suddenly doing harvest in France. Or did she just...
Did she ask you to say that?
Hey, there's a presence always.
Just Jesus. Here's the thing. We didn't have a budget because we didn't have enough money to do this. So
everything
was on the fly.
Yeah.
Everything was, how do we do this? How can we possibly do this?
Incredible.
Huge support from a wonderful grower in the Loire Valley, Bernard Germain.
Oh, wow.
Chateau de Fel. Him and his wife, they were just magnificent. They were just so kind to us and so open to share and let us have a look and see. And we started importing his barrels. And when I brought barrels back here, 400-liter French barrels to ferment Chenin Blanc, one of the local guys in Stellenbosch said, man, when you came from Joburg, did you get a return ticket? Because you're not going to be here so long if you're putting Chenin Blanc in barrels.
Yeah.
And then I knew I was on the right track.
Yeah.
Then I knew this was going to make a difference. And that was our Old Vine Reserve Chenin Blanc. And we started doing Old Vine Reserve. We put it into the marketplace then at about 50% more than any Chenin Blanc on the market. People were horrified.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, my God, how can you do that? It's so expensive for Chenin Blanc. Just taste the wine. Get over it. Taste the wine. And with that in mind, Martin Meinert, really good friend, still to this day, wonderfully patient old guy, he's put up with me all these years. And he's much older than me, as I said. He's Good mates.
Yeah.
He mentored me.
Okay.
And he's a brilliant, brilliant winemaker.
Yeah.
I never went to wine school. I went to the Martin Meinert School of Wine, which was always left field, always, and everything about his wines is balance.
Yeah.
Balance, balance, balance. You do anything you like, providing it's balanced. So for me, that was a kind of valuable lesson. And I said to him, what do we have to do to make one of the best white wines in the world? And he's like, hey, dude, slow down. You've been here 3 years. Like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Classic Joburg, mindset.
Like,
Come on.
Don't get ahead of yourself. And I'm like, is there a waiting list? Have I got to wait 5 years, 9 years? What is their number? I said, I want to make the best white wine in the world. Let's do it. Oh, yeah. Which vineyard? So I said, well, there's that crazy bush vine vineyard at the gate. That stuff's really old. Planted 1970. It's bush vines. It's concentrated. It's got grapefruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what we can do. 97, we fiddled around. We got barrels. We toasted the barrels, toasted the heads of the barrels. We did a barrel with acacia heads. We fiddled. We added yeast. We got 3 different kinds of yeast to stage the fermentation. We added nitrogen to feed the yeasts. We fiddled with settling agents. We stirred the wine with my golden goose putter.
Oh, I love it.
We did everything you could. And we got round 9 months later to tasting this wine. And it was absolutely shocking. It was terrible. It was awful. It was do not put in mouth. Boom.
Oh, no. I mean, that must have been absolutely traumatic. I mean,
it was slightly disappointing. Yeah. Like a train wreck.
Yeah.
Particularly for all the effort and the time and the expense and the new barrels and the special. So we started again in 98. We did again. And still, our egos were in the way. We were doing far too much with the wine. We were manipulating the wine, getting our fingerprints over it the whole time. And by 98, when we tasted that wine, it was no better. It was shocking. 99, I think we might have just had too much wine to drink one day, and the wine just we maybe had an extended tasting, and we were kind of going, this is going to get better, man. This will improve. This is going to get, this is definitely going to get better. But in fact, that kid in the class that was the bad kid in the class never got better. He ended up in jail. And I'm afraid that wine never got better.
Okay.
It ended up getting tossed out. 2000, I finally find we've not done anything. We've used a mixture of old barrel and new barrel.
Okay.
We're not doing toasted heads. We're not adding yeast. We're not feeding the fermentation. We're not going into mellow. We've just backed off and let the wine be itself. We picked the best fruit we can find, and now we let this happen. And the 2000 vintage suddenly was beautiful.
Yeah.
Took it to London. Journalist Matthew Jukes, who still writes in a prominent German, and he's like a Duracell bunny. He's like, hey, Ken, how's it going? How's the wife? How are your children? What age are your children? How many dogs you got? How many dogs? Okay, Matthew, oh, man. Let me just get one answer in. I'll be back with you in a minute. Take a break. So he's like, what have you got that's new? So I said, try this. This is unlabeled. It's our Chenin project. Thinking we might just call it Chenin project. Had no idea what else to call it. This is version 4. And we still aren't really kind of ahead of ourselves. Tastes the wine. He says, that's clever. Really amazing. I love what you've done here. You've got Chenin. You've got the flavors. But there's like you've blended Roussanne or Chardonnay. There's a richness on this wine. So I said, no, it's 100% Chenin. Matthew says to me, well, that's the most fucking marvelous Chenin I've ever tasted.
Okay.
I said, Matthew, I think we have a name. We're going to call this the FMC.
So there's that story, and then there's the sort of more, like a highbrowed version.
Well, as a tribute to Martin, I think as a thank you to Martin, I wanted to bring him in and give him something back and say to him, the Forrester Meinert Chenin, a collaboration.
Yeah.
So it was, and it worked. The Forrester Meinert just fitted the brief. So the Forrester Meinert Chenin.
But we know what it really is.
I guess so. Matthew published a book, the top 200 wines of the world, and printed this as number 12.
Cheapest.
And put the name down as he called it. So it's actually in print, and I didn't do it.
Ken, that's brilliant. And I also love how, you're looking at like 25 years ago from a vintage perspective, and a lot of that approach of less intervention, not putting winemaker fingerprints, that's come in to vogue in the last 5 years in South Africa, especially. And I just love that. And from a balance perspective, it all starts in the vineyard, right? And those old vine vineyards, if you let them be, or if you manage them carefully, they have a natural balance. Is that correct?
To a degree, yeah, very much so. It's about understanding what the vineyard needs, what it wants, about understanding how little of you it requires.
Okay.
Get your ego out the way. The wine's there. If you can just watch it, wait for it. To the vineyard, the FMC today, the 24 vintage that we've got here, was 21 selections in the vineyard. Now, we fly over that vineyard with the drone. Used to be with a fixed-wing camera, which was really interesting because we had a big camera. The camera is the size of a carton of cigarettes, just about.
Yeah.
I mean, like a big box of, and we had to convince somebody to cut a hole in their Cessna to carry our camera.
Wow. That must have been tricky.
You want to cut my airplane up? Yeah, sure. Flying 3,000 foot. Now it's all done by drone. It's so much just, and the drone quality, the data, the software behind it all. We've got so much information, so much data that embarrassingly, we're not using 10% of the data we've got.
Yeah.
We just don't have enough time to mine it, and we don't have enough. We don't need, probably could help us, but we're at a point where we get enough data out of that 10%.
Yeah.
And for us, the most critical aspect is the leaf cover. So we started in this country about 20 years ago with a New Zealand professor who kind of ended up shipwrecked here somehow. He was doing capital NDVI, Normalized Density Vegetative Index, and nobody had heard of it. Nobody knew what it was. And we were really keen on that, and hence we were taking those photos from the airplane to get that normalized density. When we read the green leaf of the vineyard as infrared, we flip it.
Okay.
Read it as infrared and then create a density. Normalize it by taking out the cover crop. So you're only looking at the density of the vineyard without the cover crop. So you now have parts of your vineyard with more leaf and other parts of the vineyard with less leaf.
So it's looking at that vegetative growth. What's
Correct.
more, what's weaker soils, or it could be anything. It could be the plant state.
It could
of health.
be an ancient ant's nest.
Yes.
That was there 200 years ago that you'd never noticed when you prepped your soil.
Yes.
But that ant's nest is just better aerated than any other part of your vineyard. So you have a perfect circle in your vineyard. You think it might be an alien crop ring or something. It's an old ant's nest.
Amazing. So, Ken, let's maybe take a journey through Chenin Blanc as you've reflected it, because you've got such beautiful examples here. It is such a versatile grape, and it's often the grape that, from a white wine perspective, we just talk about. Whether you are in a coastal location, you've got Creole, spicy kind of seafood flavors. You've got, lemon butter sauces. You've got poultry. You've got pasta. I've even had your FMC with lamb before, and it was absolutely beautiful. Where should we start? And then we can kind of take a journey through Chenin. We've started with the pet nut.
The pet nat is a great place to start.
Yeah, let's talk through this.
Because here you've still got all the lees in the bottle.
Okay.
You've got all the stuff down here. And that's just beautiful. That keeps the wine fresh. If ever you talk about natural wine, this is about as natural as a wine can possibly be.
So primary fermentation in the bottle.
So no, primary fermentation starts in a tank.
Okay, you started
Conventional
in tank.
fermentation in a tank.
Yeah.
We use no sulfites before fermentation.
Yes.
Not on the grapes, not in the tank, zero. So we go into tank, whole bunch pressed. In the tank, fermentation starts automatically. There's yeast on the grape skins. So spontaneous fermentation. Once that ferment goes, we leave it and we watch it.
Okay.
And every day you come and read your sugar, and you're diminishing sugar, increasing alcohol.
Yes.
During the fermentation period, we get down to a magic number.
Okay.
Now, Sean won't let me tell anybody the magic number. But he's taken pet nat to heart. He's my geek.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to have a youngster in the team.
Yes.
Got to have somebody to sort your photos out.
Amazing. Yeah.
So Sean takes a look at this, and he drains fermenting juice from the top of the tank, not the bottom valve that's so convenient, because at the bottom valve you've got so much sludge You got so much
Tons of
settling
lees,
stuff
yeah.
happening, all the lees. He wants the clearest juice he can to start off with. Drains it into the bottle, puts a beer cork on it, racks it into a bin, and lets it lie in the bin, and these 444 bottles lie in the bin and ferment.
Beautiful.
Now, you've got to have that pressure
Yes.
dead right, because if you bottle that juice, then it's going to create more pressure fermentation in the bottle
So more CO2.
than what the bottle can handle.
Yeah.
Those 440 bottles are going to start exploding one after each other. You're going to produce one massive bomb.
Yeah.
So this is just spontaneous,
Beautiful.
natural fermentation. And at no point have we had any opportunity even to add anything to it. So this is about as natural as juice can be.
Yeah, what I love about it is it's got that beautiful Chenin fruit freshness, but then that sparkle, that little
Buzz.
prickle, little bubble. Stunning.
Fun wine, real fun wine.
Yeah.
My go-to wine during the day. It's low in alcohol,
Yeah.
and it's a real buzz
Breakfast wine.
breakfast wine.
Fantastic. And is that your stained glass window in the cellar?
That's a stained glass window in the cellar,
Beautiful.
and we do a range of colors. We just incorporate the different colors. We do a rosé with Grenache.
Lovely.
We do this as Chenin Blanc, and of course we do a Cap Classique in Chenin Blanc. So we do
Yes.
the conventional Cap Classique. That's primary fermentation in the tank. Let that fermentation complete. We pick it at a really high acidity.
Okay, so it's very...
We controversially don't look at the sugars, we look at the acids.
okay.
People say, what's your sugar when you pick? I haven't got a clue. The sugar becomes what it is because I picked. It's not the reason we pick. The sugar is the result of having picked.
Because if you pick based on sugar, you might end up with just a sticky kind of slightly... Acidity is everything to kind of clean the palate of the...
Kind of controversially, my view on sugars is that sugar's like trying to determine somebody's IQ by their shoe size. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sugar's a number.
Yeah.
But it's a number that means how much sugar you've got. That's what that means. It does not mean how ripe you are. It means that's how much sugar you've got.
Okay.
That's what that means.
Yeah.
It's fairly straightforward.
Gotcha.
And so like we pick on acid.
And
We
taste.
measure the acid. We want a certain acidity and we pick at that acid level. What happens is when we pick at that acid level, we'll end up with a certain sugar. That's the result of having picked. That goes into a tank, ferments. You've now got a massive acid sitting there. You've got to go through a mallow to drop that acid. And I also want to start creating some champagne flavors, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, like
I want some
biscuity, brioche,
biscuit, brioche, those kind of truffle flavors, those kind of umami flavors that you get out of malolactic. So we'll go through a malolactic fermentation. We then filter the wine, prep it for bottling. I mean, this is how crazy winemakers are. I have this beautifully clear filtered wine about to go into bottle, and you add yeast and sugar, stir and pour it in.
Yeah.
When you push that green button on the bottling line, it better start, because otherwise your tank is going to explode. You just put sugar and yeast into a tank of perfectly clear wine. Into the bottle, crown cork. Every single sparkling wine in the world
Yes.
starts its life with a crown cork. There's one exclusion where they do the cork in the bottle with a hook over.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of old school. Crown cork is 99% of every sparkling wine, champagne, Dom Perignon. Every one in the world begins its life as a beer cap. I like that.
And then
Open up after fermentation, 18 months on the lees, degorge, get rid of the plug of all of that sediment that we haven't got rid of in the pet nat, and you now have a perfectly clear, beautiful champagne. You think about, well, what happened because you've poured all that out of the pot? Well, we have sacrificial bottles, which you then use the same champagne to top up, or you create a liquid expedition, which is basically a little bit of sweetness or something that you're adding to that contrast.
Got you. So where do you think we should go next? Should we go into the sparkles?
I think we could. We've had a little sparkle.
Yeah.
Why don't we go onto the still wines?
Beautiful.
I think Petty Chenin. This is our currency. This is our.
Yes.
This is the stuff that just, and it's our cheapest wine.
Yes.
It's our least expensive wine. But at the same time, I've got to say to you, it's the hardest wine in the portfolio to make consistently.
Yeah.
Because The people who buy this wine are loyal.
Yeah, they're so used to
love
over
it.
delivering.
They love it. It has to over deliver, and it's got to be as good as it was last year. So from that point of view, we really have to be careful. And the key, Alistair, every single bottle of wine I make, every ton of grapes we pick, we harvest by hand. It's critical. Harvesting by hand is your first step to quality. When you were a kid and you picked up a bad apple, Mom said, no, not that one. You put it down again. Nobody is going to go pick a bad bunch of grapes. It's just not in our nature. A bird comes along, sits on a bunch of grapes, pecks away at a whole lot of grapes, drains, you get all this syrup coming out of the bunch. The bunch goes rotten. You're not going to pick that bunch. A machine comes through the vineyard, it harvests that bunch.
It's in.
It harvests all of your spiders, all of your ants, all of your lizards, the odd snake. All of that gets harvested, gets dumped into the bin, and it gets carried around for 2 hours before the harvester gets back to the cellar. You drain that, then you separate all the bits and pieces that you didn't want, and people are not too worried about that. But you tell me how you get the milk out your coffee when you've put it in there already.
Exactly. Yeah.
So all those bad bunches, all those ants, all those spiders, all those lizards are in the juice. People say, is your wine vegan friendly? Well, I have to tell you, if it's harvested by machine, that's a definite no. You got protein, baby.
I never thought of that.
There's added protein, baby. Yeah. I got to tell you, this is protein enhanced.
Yeah. But that explains, you've always managed to get this purity of fruit on the Petty range. And it is actually crazy how often entry-level wines at this quality, it's way more work than like the minimum intervention of like your beautiful in balance FMC vineyard. And this is like, there's a lot of work here. It's blending, selecting the right sites.
And you're dealing in some volume, so you've got to get it right. It's really about sites. We grow the fruit. We know what we're doing in terms of viticulture, have one of the sharpest viticulturists in the country working on our team. So viticulture is critically important. And then from there on, harvesting by hand, intervention with the grapes, sulfites, oxygen, all these things start to play a role until you get to your final product. And we want to be able to get to the market with a stable wine. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that's ever going to produce those nervous, squeaky little wines. I mean, that's not in my nature. So, I mean, for me, we love the wines are stable. They've already seen oxygen during fermentation. We've not been reductive.
Yes.
And, for me, oxygen is a great thing. I mean, it's great. It's the ultimate yin-yang.
Yes.
Take a deep breath. Now take another one. You can only take one deep breath. Now, wine has an oxygen potential.
Okay.
It can only bind so many O2 molecules till there's nowhere left to bind.
Got you.
So I'm not concerned about oxygen. It'll come to a balance. The other thing about oxygen, the beautiful thing about oxygen, is the tragedy of oxygen, is that we need oxygen to live. And every breath we take takes us one breath closer to our last.
Yeah.
So there's this wonderful yin-yang of oxygen. And I'm fascinated by using oxygen.
Yeah. And can it go too much oxygen in that whole fermentation process? It can obviously take it too far, right? Can go to
I think you're quite safe during fermentation because you're going to scavenge all the oxygen available. You're scavenging all the oxygen available. You're blowing off CO2. So I think you're quite safe during fermentation. After fermentation, you've got to be pretty smart about keeping the wine tight and not encouraging. I mean, we have signs all over the cellar saying, limit the risk of excess oxygen. Okay, so we look at excess oxygen as a problem, not oxygen.
Okay, got you. That makes sense. And then, Ken, this wine, it's one of our most popular wines in Africa. It's got a lot going on. How do you get that complexity? I mean, is there oak? Is there like lees contact? What's giving it that? Because there's a lot of texture as well as fruit.
We allow the wine to ferment. We'll watch the ferments closely. We'll generally get a fermentation started, just a spontaneous ferment. Then we're watching that on a daily basis. At some point, we might add yeast. We might decide we need to just put a bigger yeast in there to now control the ferment for the second part.
Okay.
No sulfites as usual. After fermentation, on the lees.
Okay, that gives it.
Leave it on the lees.
texture.
Don't touch it. Don't stir the lees. Just keep it on the lees for as long as possible. The market dictates. We don't
Got
have
you.
rules.
Yeah.
If we run out of stock, we get it off the lees and into the bottle.
Yeah.
Complexity comes from different parcels, different vineyards.
Okay.
This is almost always Western Cape, and we incorporate fruit from Robertson, Paarl, and Stellenbosch.
Stunning.
And so Robertson gives us mineral, chalky kind of different soil type. Paarl gives us that ripe concentration. We're looking at Paarl hillsides, bush vines. So we're getting ripe concentration on bush vines in Petty Chenin, baby, hand harvested.
Incredible.
Yeah. So why is it good? Because we choose great fruit.
Yeah.
You know, it's really important. And it's a question of pride for me. I mean, we will over-deliver. That's the way it is.
Fantastic. So let's take the next step. I mean, this is a wine that a lot of followers of the podcast will be pouring for their guests. And I just love this. What you've created is this journey through Chenin, because you've got something that you can drink every night. You've got something you can open for a special occasion. You've got something that you should just maybe have by yourself because it's so rare and so special. What is next in the Ken Forrester journey?
Next is Old Vine Reserve.
Okay.
This is really what changed the world of Chenin Blanc. I say that unashamedly. I mean,
This was your first.
Got you all over the place.
No worries.
Messy waiter. There you go. So this is what changed the world of Chenin Blanc. I came back from France and I watched what they were doing. And I was like, these guys are fermenting in 400-liter barrels.
Okay.
I brought barrels back with me and started fermenting. People were like, hey, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Partially barrel fermented, partially tank fermented, hand harvested, old vineyards. What could go wrong? I mean, we had a whole lot of great components. Let's put that together and see what we get. Fortunately, back in the day, Alan Mullins was the buyer for Woolworths. I took him this wine and he was sympathetic. He said, man, I can't sell Chenin Blanc, but I'll try. And he put this into Woolworths, which for me was just a prayer.
I mean, that's huge, Ken.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 2000.
This is going back to 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 years ago. And so this ended up in Woolies. I was like, wow. And then I took it overseas. I got in a black cab in London. I paid him for a whole morning. I'd never paid so much money for a cab ride in my life. I was like, I'm going to need a mortgage for this cab ride.
And that was when the pound went for the first time up to 20 or whatever it was.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I drove around to all the retailers. And finally, a year later, 9 months later, Steve Daniel from Oddbins came out to South Africa. We did a tasting at our dining room table. We didn't have a tasting room. My wife and I sat at the dining room table like this and did a tasting with Steve Daniel. And at the end of that tasting, he gave me an order that I couldn't even talk. I was like,
Oh, wow.
it was just, couldn't believe it. And this is what he took.
Wow.
And this was our rescue. This is the wine that set us on course to do something special with Chenin Blanc. This changed the public's perception of Chenin Blanc from a nasty, cheap blending wine to something that can stand on its own, that has all of the texture of a fine wine, that has all of the richness of a Chardonnay, all of the poise of a Sauvignon Blanc. All of it, it covers so many bases. And yet this is Chenin.
It's so incredible. I mean, I'm ashamed to say that at the time of that wine breaking into the UK Woolworths, I just arrived at UCT, and my Chenin Blanc experience, I think, started with Autumn Harvest. So this is
Got to start somewhere.
This is the reality of like what Chenin Blanc was being used for, right? I mean, I would have imagined that would have been Colombar, Chenin.
Well, we had our biggest blends in the country at the time were things like Carafino.
Okay. So it's like semi-sweet.
It was in a carafe, like this glass 2-liter carafe thing.
Classy.
And that was Chenin Blanc. And then we went to Grasser. That was Chenin Blanc. And we went to Tuskelder, Tusheimer. That was Chenin Blanc. But we never knew. Nobody said Chenin Blanc.
And they somehow made it sweet, sickly sweet and sour at the same time. It was like this horrific combo.
That's easy enough. Acid and sugar, just sugar acid, baby. You know, you just take a jar of honey and some lemon juice. You can play the same game.
No, so I mean, this is, Like, and so explain to me what makes Chenin in this form just so attractive, because it's got a lot going on.
The beauty of Chenin is its shyness, is it doesn't flash. You, as I said earlier, you'll notice Chenin one day and you go, "Have I met you before?" And it'll embarrassing tell you that she's been here for 5 years. You go, "Oh, really?" I guess that blew that.
Yeah.
But that's it. Chenin is that gorgeous, gorgeous wine that you just didn't notice. It wasn't there. It didn't show. And the French will tell you with their Chenin Blanc, when they bottle Chenin, it sleeps for a year.
Okay.
In the bottle, it sleeps for a year. They should always leave it for the first year and then come back to it. So Chenin Blanc is not obvious. It's shy. It's quiet. It has wonderful texture. Texture for me in wine, critical. Texture, humans, all of us. We're tactile creatures. We want to shake hands. We want to hug. The food that you really love and that you really don't love, not about the flavor. It's about the texture.
That's so true.
People don't love popcorn for the flavor of popcorn.
Yeah.
It's the crunch. It's the texture.
Yeah.
It's really about the texture. Slippery mushrooms on a pizza. No, I don't want to touch that,
Yeah.
Texture.
Give me some crisp bacon. Yeah.
Texture.
Yeah. It's so interesting because we don't talk enough about texture with wine. It's always flavor driven, but this has got that, it's got that incredible structure for a white wine.
Yeah.
And then there's also something for me, which I love about Chenin, which it gets a slightly savory element as well.
Always. Now, that savory element where we are, where our vineyards are situated, we're behind False Bay.
Yeah.
Imagine this giant horseshoe filled with ocean, and we're the land behind that horseshoe. At some point, that was ocean. The salt in this wine is sea salt. It was there 100,000 years ago, or 200,000 years ago. That ridge of mountains behind us, the Helderberg, the water was up to there.
Yeah.
You can pick up shells on the Helderberg, huh? How's that possible? Yeah.
Because it's got such beautiful salinity. And then, because, this is a little bit off topic, but the world of wine is under pressure a little bit at the moment with all, we walk through the sort of gym and there's a lot of people who influence the world in terms of you need to wake up at 4 a.m., look in direct sunlight, don't have any fun, go exercise, don't drink coffee within an hour and a half, have your chicken breast with broccoli, and that's your life from now on, and that's how you're going to live to 110 or 120. But what they're missing is that wine is such a way to connect with people and have experiences. So you think of wine, it's always, great wines always have an address, and there's a connection to a person, So obviously, when I drink your wine, I think of your beautiful vineyards. I think of you. I think of our conversations. But then on the other side of the coin, it's where did I enjoy the wine? Who with? And have you seen any of that impacting your business and this whole sort of trend against alcohol, but at the same time, like wine, it's not like we remember our first glass of wine. We remember it very differently to maybe our first shot of vodka.
I look at it, first of all, trends.
Yes. Come and go. In the simplest terms, we've seen stack heels come and go. We've seen mini skirts come and go. I noticed you didn't wear your bell bottoms today.
Well, can I tell you, I got them. They're new, brand new. I believe they're coming back.
They're coming back.
Yeah, I just dug them out. They're 20 years old. Yeah. So trends, yeah. I think it's critical to stick to what you do and to develop a unique thumbprint and to work on that thumbprint, making sure it's a unique thumbprint. As soon as you muddy your thumbprint that it looks like everybody else's, you're on a race to the bottom. For me, yes, we do see there's definitely a worldwide noise against alcohol. They did it with cigarettes. They took smoking. Smoking was so socially acceptable. People smoked in airplanes, in trains, in cinemas, in your home. People smoked anywhere at all, and it was really cool to sit and that have a tug on that, and really cool. And they turned those people into social pariahs, that if you smoked, you were just about persona non grata. And just that's human nature. We're led by donkeys most of the time, but we're led, and we do things without really thinking about it because it seems to be where the trend is going.
100%.
I'm not that wild about trends. I want to stick to what we know, stick to what we do, and focus on the quality of what we do.
Yeah.
Quality will override.
Yeah, and moments, celebrations, we all need to sit. We can all sit on our phones at dinner, or we can sit around the table and connect, truly connect, have conversations, just that little moment of cheers.
Well,
it's so ingrained in our culture, just celebrating the end of a week or a day.
I have the blessing of so many people who will send me a WhatsApp or a text, and they're sitting somewhere having a glass of wine in Dar es Salaam.
Yes.
Hey, Ken, I've got your wine. I'm in Dar es Salaam. And the guy, last time I saw him was in Canada.
Yeah.
And he's now gone to Africa. He thinks I'm nearby Dar es Salaam.
Yeah, of course.
Not too far. Close. Do you know John?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But here they are, toasting to a glass of Petty Chenin in the sunset in Dar es Salaam. And I'm like, nothing could make me happier.
Yeah.
Nothing could make me prouder.
Yeah.
But we talk about trends. Here's a trend. Here's
Yes.
the thing that dirty little secret thing.
Can I get that through to you?
Yeah.
Or should I pour for us?
You should check that out. I'm not going to
Honestly.
mess anymore. Yeah, you're fine. So there's this trend, youngsters, you kids, come along with a nice little pop there.
Yeah.
Hello. That was from, making
Look at that
natural wine.
colour. Okay,
So
yes.
I'm looking at a kid, and he's very proud, and he's got this murky, cloudy, terrible stuff. Smells
like
like
a probiotic, basically.
a probiotic. Sure. Kind of like bad apple juice. And it's in the glass, and you say, dude, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, no, man, you don't understand. It's natural. And I'm going, but why is it cloudy? And he's like, well, I told you, natural. So we don't filter. Well, I have unfiltered wines in my cellar. I can go take you to any barrel you like. It's not cloudy.
Yeah.
It's cloudy if you stir up the lees in the bottom, but why would you want to do that? We were taught, and we know there's an English expression, scraping the bottom of the barrel. You don't do that. That's frowned upon. Yet, these kids want to scrape the bottom of the barrel and bottle it with their wine because the lees, they believe, keeps the wine healthy in the absence of sulfites, etc., etc., etc. I thought to myself, you can't beat them, join them. Let's go and let's show these guys how to make a clean, dirty wine.
Yeah.
So we set out to make a dirty wine, unfiltered. And obviously, it had to be a bit of a secret because I couldn't go throw my whole reputation away by getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So I found a vineyard. It had to be a special vineyard.
Yes.
I get to the Cederberg foothills on the left-hand side of the highway in Pickeneeskloof
Is that where that little farm stall is?
at 800 meters.
Beautiful.
800 meters above sea level, looking into the Atlantic, 20 kilometers away. You're down, you get these morning mists. You walk through this bushvine vineyard, up to your knees, you're wet from the dew on the vineyard, this kind of hanging vineyard. Sandy soils. And you'd think to yourself, what would you plant? This is not soil. This is like somebody forgot the beach up here. It's like a beach. And this vineyard was planted in 1959. Chenin Blanc planted in 59. So archaic that when they took their first crop to the cellar in 63, the seller said, okay, cool, what's your registration number? They're like, oh, wow. We didn't do that. Oh, yeah, we should have registered. Where you got to go to Paul. Pickeneeskloof to Paul is like a day trip with a visa. It's a long way away. It's not like I'm going to be back in half an hour.
Yeah.
So they finally register the vineyard. So it's not registered as planted 59. It's planted 63 according to the record.
So funny.
Coincidentally, they produced their first wine in 63.
Yeah.
Well, figure.
What vigor?
No. So there we go. And it then, even curiouser, years later, where they'd lost vines because they're at 800 meters above sea level, no dam, no water, no irrigation. Morning dew off the ocean and rainfall.
Yeah.
Natural bush vines. Where they lost vines, clever farmers of old, we've got this cunning grape. There's we call it locally in Afrikaans, we call it Frans, French. It's not French at all. It's Spanish. Its real name is Palomino. And it's the most virile grape. You could plant it on a brick wall and it'll grow. And the other beauty of Palomino is it produces a 2-kilogram bunch.
Wow.
So when you're selling tons, baby, this is the way to go.
Here's my Chenin Blanc. Yeah.
You fill a bin of Chenin Blanc vineyard and interplanted with Palomino, nobody's checking bunches.
No.
It all goes as Chenin Blanc.
Yeah.
You got peculiar flavor in your Chenin Blanc. Yeah, sure we do. Yeah. It's our terroir.
That's incredible.
So this is a history lesson in a bottle. I love that we're talking 50 years of history, 60 years of history, and this is what the guys were doing of the day.
Yeah.
And it was quite normal and it was quite acceptable. Now we go through this vineyard and we pick only the Chenin. Easy to separate because we know what
you can
the
see
2 kilo
table
bunch.
grapes.
You avoid the big ones, you go for the little guys. This then goes whole bunch into a tank,
Okay.
cold soaked, and we let it stew on its own, whole bunch stalks, for like 2 weeks.
At that lower temperature, or
It warms up slowly,
okay, so coming up to
and we start, and I'm tasting it. And once I start to pick up some of those phenols, I go, whoa, I think we've gone far enough.
wow.
Press it into old neutral barrels. Somebody said, oh, second fill. No, I said old. Like 15-year-old barrels.
Got you.
Proper old vessels.
Are you using those 400-liter ones?
Those big 400s, steam cleaned,
Lovely.
absolutely pristine, clean, steamed.
Yeah.
Wine goes in there, spontaneous fermentation, wild yeasts, goes through mallow, has to its natural, goes through mallow, and then after mallow, we look at what we're going to bottle. On that cork, have a look at that cork. There's a list along that cork of numbers. That, in fact, is the formula of all the vintages of the barrels involved in that wine. I've blended 7 vintages together to make one wine. 7 vintages out of the same soil, out of the same vineyard, 7 years, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
Wow.
7 vintages, and when you taste this wine, you can taste the layers. When you sip this wine, if you were sitting reading a book or watching TV, you have a sip, and 10 minutes later you have another sip. It's like, who moved my wine? You changed my wine?
It really has changed. It just constantly evolves.
It's every single layer reacts with the freedom of oxygen separately. So you have 7 wines here talking to oxygen at different times.
Wow.
You have 7 reactions taking place with each other, without each other.
So Penny is our group sommelier, and she's putting together sommelier selection wines for Africa, and this is high up on the list because it's almost like it's like the Library of Alexandria for Chenin Blanc. You know, you are going into so much history and so many layers of flavor, fruit, texture. It's unbelievable, and the purity of this for a so-called natural wine or orange wine or whatever you want to call it.
You know what I love? They say it's cloudy because it's not filtered. This is not filtered.
I know.
This is out of the barrel.
Yeah.
This has never seen a filter.
Wow.
You know, when I bought my first filter, I can't remember the guy's name, Schrodinger. He was a Swiss guy. He had this wonderful company of best equipment. And I bought a filter, and it came to deliver. He said, let me explain this filter. Now, on this side, you can put the wine there. That side, you can take water out. I was like, whoa, that's not what I ordered.
Yeah. I think Jesus did it the other way around.
Imagine.
Yeah.
And that's what filters do. They strip wine. This is raw, unfiltered. And I think all the better for it.
Oh, Ken, masterpiece. Beautiful. Wow. Okay.
And given that,
yes,
it created another opportunity. That after years,
chase this side by side.
After years of having missed the point and finding and digging up the Chenin and taking the Chenin only, and the Palomino, we got this issue with Palomino in the vineyard. I'm now going to find somebody who wants Palomino. I thought to myself, hold on, we're wasting a valuable resource. This Palomino is 60 years old. What if we harvest Chenin and Palomino in the vineyard as a golf shot. Play it as it lies.
Mm-hmm.
So you pick Chenin, Palomino, Chenin, Palomino, Chenin, Palomino, Palomino. And you go pick the vines, pick a whole lot. Just put them in a basket. Pick it up, take it back.
Brilliant.
And this is a field blend of Chenin and Palomino in this vineyard, planted in 1959. The Palomino was added in 67.
Okay.
So this is the late comer.
Yeah.
It's a youngster.
Input.
Yeah, it's Mbutstokkies. So this is only 50 years old, not 60 years old. Yeah.
Or a youngster. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, and this is just, the fact that we've got these wines to drink now, it's because the farmers were effectively incentivized to grow a grape that was reliable and was quite robust. And Chenin it's a survivor. But then at the same time, they weren't making enough money to replant, every 10 years.
The shocking thing is they made enough money to keep going without ever thinking that one day I'm going to have to replace this resource.
Yeah.
And planting today is R500,000 a hectare.
Exactly.
You want to plant 20 hectares, you got 10 million cash lying around.
Mm.
Boom. Suddenly your vineyard's coming to an end, and you've never provided the opportunity, you've never provided the wherewithal to replant that. So we see the end of a cycle. Yeah. It's happening all around us. South Africa's grape,
the national
vineyard has dropped from 128,000 hectares to 88,000 hectares. We're down 40,000 hectares.
Wow.
That's a lot of vineyard.
Mm.
Yeah, a lot of vineyard.
That's scary, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's happening all around us. I'm grateful to have access to these resources and to be able to use them in such a way that I think they tell a story interestingly.
Yeah.
I think they reflect, honestly, this is history. What happened here will never happen again. Mm. Nobody is going to plant Palomino and Chenin in the same vineyard. I promise you they're not going to do that. And we have an opportunity to take that vineyard and do something unbelievably special.
And Ken, do you have any insights into any of these old vines projects that actually have naturally reached the end?
Yes.
Are they being replanted with Chenin? Is there like a continuation at least of that legacy?
There's thoughts and there's discussions around it. I personally have been involved in an old vine Grenache vineyard, which was planted by the same person in the same area, just 5 kilometers away. Not on her property, on somebody else's property. She planted Grenache. I used that Grenache. I made wine with that Grenache. And eventually that property was sold and the guy who bought it wanted to rip it out and could not be bribed. The money I offered him per ton of grapes was unthinkable. And he was like, words of one syllable. No, just completely not interested. I took cuttings of that Grenache, put them into a lab, hyper-grew them. They said it would take 2 to 3 years. It took 5 years. A little more expensive than we thought. You hyper-grow a new bud off a cutting in a growing medium in a environment which is 80% humidity and 35 degrees. Perfect growing conditions. As that bud grows off your cutting, you cut the bud off the cutting and you put the bud back into a growing medium to create a bud off the bud.
Okay. And
you continue doing that. Yeah. You're looking to get about 15 buds a year, and you're growing those buds so quickly in ideal conditions that you grow away from the virus that might be infected in the plant.
Okay.
So that your bud material becomes clean because the virus can't keep up, the infection can't stay with it. We did that with Grenache. We went so far as to work with the University of Stellenbosch, University of Montpellier. We had the guys from Montpellier come out here. They're the foremost ampelography experts in the world. Ampelography, the study of grape leaves and grape characteristics, the study of vine characteristics. And they came out, they have a database, and they've now tied that database to DNA. So it's no longer just an opinion. It's DNA registered. And they took cuttings from our vineyards, our FMC vineyard, and cuttings from that Grenache vineyard back to France. That Grenache no longer happens, no longer exists in France. It's unique. It's a mutation.
It's mutation.
It's South African Grenache.
Yeah.
I have planted that Grenache on my property in Stellenbosch.
Brilliant, Ken. So that's a continuation of that.
And that will be, as I'm harvesting a vineyard that's 60 years old, I happen to have met the person who planted it. I'm very fortunate. Hopefully, the person who's harvesting my vineyard in 60 years' time might meet me sometime. But I'll be long gone. But at least I've left something behind, and there'll be a trace. And so we've done the same with FMC and Grenache. So we've got Grenache and FMC, 2 vineyards planted for the future.
Amazing. What an incredible story. I'm so glad to hear that, because it's that it's not just the actual plant material, but it's the DNA of how it's being made, and that that low intervention balance in the vineyard. I just think that legacy will go hand in hand with the vines as well. So it's a dual legacy, plant and person.
I just think it's really cool that there's a legacy that it's going to continue. I've got a picture of my daughter when I replanted the cuttings from the FMC vineyard. I took cuttings off FMC, grafted them onto rootstock, planted next door to FMC, and we put a big bulldozer through there to prepare the soil. And this massive hook behind the bulldozer, this 2.5 meter hook, I stood her under this hook, and I got a photograph of her underneath this bulldozer. And I said, baby, somebody is going to come and harvest this fruit, and you can tell them you were here.
Yeah, amazing. And now she's got
She's got little kids, yeah. No, listen.
So
home right now is totally special. We got my mum's mum, my wife, my wife's mum, my wife, our daughter, and her daughter. We got 4 generations of girls.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's so special.
Yeah.
I mean, a gypsy once said to me, I'll be surrounded by girls. That's not what I had in mind.
When you got that tarot card reading, you were like, yes. Brilliant, Ken.
Maybe.
So this is the field blend. It's got it does have a very different characteristic to just the pure Chenin.
I love that waxiness.
Yeah, it's like an orange skin.
It's orange skin. There's a hint of apricot maybe. And there's even a slight kind of fennel, vegetal fennel.
Yeah. It's really, these are, like just a snapshot of a place and time and history. Beautiful.
I think we should have a look at that FMC.
I think that's the next.
We've got to that point where we can finally go to FMC.
Beautiful.
We're looking 2024 vintage.
Yeah.
In the market already. We can just about keep up.
Yeah.
We literally, I would love to launch this wine a year later. I'd love to have it in the cellar for a year and launch it in 26. But we just can't keep up.
Yeah.
This, as I said to you, is 21 selections, 21 separate wines. We make wine 21 times out of the same vineyard, all in barrel, 100% French oak, 400-liter barrels, nearly 40% new, about 38% new.
Wow.
All the ferments are separate. There's a 3-barrel fermentation, a 2-barrel fermentation, a 6-barrel fermentation, a 2-barrel fermentation, as it goes, as we select, as we pick. Little batches, whole bunch pressed. Like to know that we've got the stalks in that press, that we're getting that kind of little bit of protein out of the stalks. It helps me to settle the wine. It clarifies the wine. Have the protein handy. Protein, what happens in the barrel, I call the ballet of oxygen. That O2 molecule slides into the barrel between the staves. You don't see it. It's a molecule. It's tiny. But we figure about 1 million molecules a day, roughly put. That molecule is an O2. It can bind twice. Bind once and again. Then it can't bind again. It's done. It's oxygen, but it's now held. It loves protein. Barrels are cellulose. They're wood. They're positively charged. In that positive charge, oxygen finds protein and binds. A tank, stainless steel, will carry the charge that you give it. You can charge it positively or negatively. It'll switch charges. It doesn't have the cellulose that creates the charge. That proton charge is critical. And what happens in the barrel, that oxygen is now joined to 2 proteins. those proteins and that oxygen are now a little thread. That thread we call a polymer. Those polymers happen a million times a day and in all different directions. They form a net, and they gradually settle through the wine over time. We think it's about 4 months, the settling period. And that settling period takes with it any other solids that are floating in suspension in the wine. And your wine is completely clarified. It's that ballet of oxygen.
Yeah. And that's, we often in wine training, we talk about barrels and flavor, but actually your masterclass, it's very much around that élevage and how it, the bed head just gets smoothed and softened. And I think that's such an important thing to remember about oak.
I don't think oak should be about flavor.
No. It's really just that élevage.
Absolutely. A word that we can't really translate in English.
No.
French word élevage means to raise up, to educate, to elucidate, to bring up, but it is no one word. So this is FMC.
Beautiful.
24. We do our very best to start this wine off as tightly wound as possible, that it's not terribly expressive when it's young, because I really want it to age. I've fortunately, been able to make wine for the last 35 years, and took myself on tour last year, went to all sorts of really, very high-end establishments, and took with me FMC and invited guests to a tasting and a dinner. FMC going back to 2003, served from magnums, and showing 20 vintages of FMC at a dinner. In London, in New York, twice in London at 67 Pall Mall, at the old war offices, the Churchill's old war offices. 20 sommeliers of the very top restaurants in London. And such is the pull of FMC that we invited 20 sommeliers. We had 25 responses.
Hawks. Yeah.
It was that tricky, and it was just amazing to be able to show those wines with beautiful food to people who are interested in wine, and to sit back and look at a body of work over 20 years that has really made a difference to a cultivar.
Yeah, I think I recently read an article, which I'll put in the link when you publish the podcast, but I just loved it. But it was basically saying that great wines are the small compounding actions repeated. So in other words, that day that you walk into a cellar, you notice something with that barrel and that age of barrel, and that becomes a small little decision thread, or a pruning technique in the vineyard that just tweaks slightly, a cover crop. And it's these small actions that compound. It's not these big. So at the beginning, it was the big actions, like let's try that. But actually, then you realize, and you could probably spend days talking about how these small actions have compounded over time.
Absolutely. And you talk about pruning.
Yeah.
The same guy who prunes this row of vineyards is the guy who harvests that row. That's his row. We've designated that row to him or her. When we prune, we weigh the pruning cuttings. When we harvest, we weigh the crop. We have a correlation between the pruning cuttings and the crop. And we measure those correlations. There's a load of stuff going on in the background all the time that just reinforces our belief in what we're doing, and instructs us that what we're doing could be better, we could get it closer. And we're constantly looking at finding the truth out of the vines. What does that fruit taste like? Here's a simple thing. You look at wine, is it animal? I guess not. Vegetable? Probably not. Mineral? Fruit? Hey, there's a good idea. So why shouldn't it taste like fruit? Let's make it taste like fruit. And that's why I have an issue about barrels tasting like oak. Which part of terroir is your barrel?
It's someone else's terroir. It's the terroir of the forest.
But I love that ballet of oxygen. There you go.
Brilliant, Ken.
Yeah.
So, Ken, we've actually run out of time, but I in closing, we've gone through aperitif, we've gone through beautiful wines to pair with food. There's a little secret something over here that I'd love for you just to kind of explain, because I'm all about the wine experience being part of a journey in dining. So you start with something, you have a beautiful middle, and then you have an end. What have we got here?
So all of those FMC barrels, I spoke to you about scraping the bottom of the barrel. We leave the bottom of the barrel. That's called the lees. But that's really special stuff. We take all of that lees and we take it to a really good friend who's a master distiller with some very smart equipment, copper, and we double distill that Chenin Blanc FMC lees to produce a fine grappa. It's called a mark, essentially. And what we say and what we propose is that here you have this illustration of a vineyard, of a vine, dropping its last leaf in the autumn. And when we've dropped that leaf, we've already captured the spirit of FMC in the bottle.
Beautiful.
And there you have a sipping, wonderfully soft grappa. This stuff's good enough to use as aftershave. I do it.
Brilliant, Ken. Well, I think the spirit of FMC is this combination of terroir, of balance, of your passion and dedication, and it's just incredible to go through this journey, because it really like that vineyard for me like represents so much of your personality as well. You know, you swim against the current. You're not scared to take risks, but you also honor the old ways, which I absolutely adore. And then you've got another aperitif for us over there as well.
This was just a bit of fun that came about because we had some Chenin Blanc and we decided what would happen if we distilled a gin out of Chenin Blanc. So we made a Chenin with very low sulfites, distilled it, and I was determined. I love music, but I believe if you want to play jazz, learn the classics first.
Yes.
Then play the jazz.
Yeah.
But you need an intrinsic knowledge of classics. So I wanted to go back to our roots. Geneva is Dutch gin. The first gin in the world was Bols Geneva. The English were too lazy to say Geneva. They called it gin.
100%.
That's where the name gin comes from. It's a contraction of Geneva. So, and Geneva means juniper. So gin should taste like distillation of juniper.
100%, not like a pink hibiscus.
So I made this to be a juniper-rich gin with Chenin Blanc. Went to the bush, went on safari kind of thing, and there the monkeys in the trees above us are knocking down these berries, and I'm asking somebody like, "What are these? Oh, these are jackalberries." So I was like, "Well, that's cool. The monkeys are eating them. Can we eat them?" And this lady looks at me like, "You guys know nothing, right? Like, you know nothing. Like, this stuff's really healthy. It's high in vitamin C. It's tasty. When they ripe, they're cool. And so try it out." So, okay. So eventually I pick some of these berries. I get them back to my friend Rolf. Say, "Can we make a schnapps out of these berries? I want to taste this stuff." Amazing. So I said, "You know what? I'm going to make a unique gin flavored with jackalberry."
Beautiful.
Jackalberry trees grow from South Africa right through the west coast, the east coast of Africa, in every riverine area. They love water. They're evergreen. They're massive trees. The biggest tree, when you're looking in the bush, the biggest tree you'll see is a jackalberry. The floor around the jackalberry is completely flattened. It's like a bush bar. All the animals meet there. "How's it, man? How you doing? What you, how you been?" Elephants come along. The jackals come along. The buck come along. It's
easy to leopard up the tree.
Leopard up the tree waiting for somebody. And jackalberries feed all of that wildlife. September, October, November, those 3 months of the year, that's when the jackalberries fruit. Once a year only. And they're just an incredible tree. In the Greek, it's called Diosporos. Dios, God. Pear of God. Mes piliformis, round like a ball.
Okay.
Diosporos mes piliformis. It's African ebony.
Wow.
It's a beautiful tree. It's protected in South Africa. The fruit, we have ladies in the Eastern Transvaal, just outside, in Mpumalanga, just outside the Kruger Park.
Yes,
In a
collecting.
town, a beautiful name. Imagine a town called Tulamahash. Tulamahash, be quiet, my horse. To have a quiet horse. Tulamahash. And in this town, these ladies pick jackalberries. They go into cold storage. They freeze them. They ship them down to us when they've got a pallet. We ferment, distill, blend into the gin, and we have a unique jackalberry gin.
Brilliant.
And all of these animals are the animals that eat jackalberry.
Yeah.
From the monkeys to the parrots and everything in between.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing this journey through Chenin, aperitifs, food, digestives. Cheers to you, and here's to many more magic moments together.
Cheers,
and
Al.
also to guests all over Africa that we serve with your wines.
Cheers to all of you, and thank you for the support. We appreciate it.
Cheers, Ken.
Love it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.